Attention birders, birdwatchers, and related civilians. It's time for Out There with the Birds, the podcast that's tastier than a deep-fried Twinkie and twice as nutritious, with your hosts, Ben Lizdas and Bill Thompson III. Out There with the Birds is supported by Swarovski Optic, makers of the amazing EL series of binoculars and the BTX spotting scope, which combines the magnification of a scope with the clarity and comfort of binocular vision. Learn more at SwarovskiOptic.com. That's Swarovski followed by optic with a K.com. Tamron camera lenses offer powerful performance that exceeds your imagination. Discover the full line of ultra telephoto zoom lenses at tinyurl.com/Tamron-BWD. Red Start Birding is your new resource for birding optics, gear, and expertise. Great birding starts at redstartbirding.com. And support also comes from the Reader Rendezvous Birding Adventures from Birdwatchers Digest. Come birding with us in our favorite places. Learn more at birdwatchersdigest.com/RR. And now, here they are, Bill and Ben.
Okay, Ben, guess what time it is?
What time is it? Is it dinner time yet, Bill?
No. Well, yes, but it's springtime. It's also time for Out There with the Birds number 30. 30.
So we were waiting for a nice even number for springtime to happen. Is it really springtime? Are we in the throes of spring yet? Doesn't feel like it.
Well, I think it's fake spring, and now here's why. I went out today in the afternoon. It was 81 degrees.
You're kidding me.
It's February 20th. And what the heck? I mean, 2 days ago, we had 5 inches of snow on the ground, and it was like 21 degrees outside.
It is here in southern Wisconsin, overcast and rainy. And it's turning like ice rain. I just went out, had some time today, and went out looking for a couple birds to add to my checklist for the Global Big Year Challenge, Out There with the Birds Global Big Year Challenge that we're doing.
Trademark.
And was driving around and searching for these flocks of snow buntings, Lapland longspurs, and horned larks.
How'd you do on that?
I saw plenty of horned larks, but I didn't need that bird yet. And I didn't need snow bunting. I was going for the Lapland longspur. Struck out on all of those. I was hoping to pick up snowy owl.
Yeah.
But, that's just, I don't know of one out and about. So I was just hoping to pick that up. And then northern shrike. Those are like some birds that I'm feeling the pressure to try and find right now. And I might have to send out a couple lifelines to some friends here in Dane County and get a little bit of help. But we can do that, right? That's part of our... But there's no. If Noah Stricker can have friends helping him for his global big year and whatnot, I feel like he sets a standard that I'm okay following that.
Okay, well that's fine. That's fine. I added a new bird just this week, which I was very excited about because it's one of the big signs of spring here in Southeast Ohio, and that was the woodcock, the Timberdoodle.
Ah, yes.
Stepped outside right at dusk. Meep, meep. And then the sky dance thing, it was awesome. I still vividly remember the first time I ever saw that as a kid. I was probably maybe 10 years old, and it just flipped me out. And every spring I try to get out and, wear some old pants and some muck boots and go out and sit in the mud and
so what's the strategy for I've done this as well. For those listening to the podcast who are wondering, all right, I want to go see this Timberdoodle creature, this terrestrial shorebird, essentially. What's the lowdown here? What do you need? Is it happen in the morning? Is it happen at night? Why are you wearing rubber boots?
Yes, to all of that. It's a terrestrial. It's a woodland shorebird. That's why they call it the woodcock, and it's. I would say they're about the size of a Nerf football, if that's a good point of reference. Not a full-size football, but like a Nerf football. And they're chunky birds, and they come out, the males, this time of year, early spring. And it's
long bill, right?
Really long bill with a flexible tip. And they feed by probing in the ground and feeling with that very sensitive, flexible tip of their bill. They feel for earthworms. And when they feel one, they grab it with the tip of their bill and pull it up out of the ground. And they have all these cool adaptations, like their eyes are way back in their head so they can see up and behind them while they're feeding. But anyway, this time of year, early spring, the males come out and they do a courtship dance. They will come to a clearing in the woods. Often it's a hilltop or a hillside or an open meadow, but it's got to have woods nearby because they live in the woods. they roost during the day in the woods, and they come out at night and feed.
Are you talking like a 20-foot in diameter circle? Like how small of a clearing do these guys need to do their thing in? Is it like
Well, I'm not sure. I'm not sure that the clearing size is necessarily a super limiting factor. I've seen them in tiny little clearings that you could maybe park 4 minivans in, but I've also seen them in wide open meadows, but always with woods nearby. So these guys will fly in, they go to a spot where they're very visible. They paint almost like to 4 directions of the compass, not precisely, but they want to send out this low nasal meh out so females can hear it. And then they hope to attract the females in to watch them. And then after a few minutes of painting into the 4 points of the compass, the males take off and they their wings whistle as they fly.
And this is all a nocturnal thing, right?
It's right at dusk.
Yeah.
It's right at dusk, and it happens again at dawn. Just as the sun is coming, well, before the sun's up. So it's at a certain foot candle, and there are all kinds of scholarly papers about this. A certain foot candle value of light. It's just, to me, it's just about dark enough that you couldn't. If somebody was standing 6 feet away from you holding a newspaper, you couldn't read it,
Gotcha. But you'd be able to see that person.
Yeah, and you'd be able to see if they had a newspaper. You just couldn't necessarily make out stuff. Now, maybe that's just me because of my eyes, but it seems like when the woodcock come out, it's when their brown mottled plumage blends in to the brown mottled grass of the field or clearing that they're in. And so they don't come out when it's light. I've occasionally, in my years of living in the country, I've occasionally scared one up out of the woods, but typically they hunker down and their cryptic coloration is their big defense. So these guys come out at just before full dark, and they'll do this for maybe 15, 20 minutes, longer when there's a full moon because the light lasts longer. And as the season goes on, what I've noticed here in Southeast Ohio is that the males there'll be a burst early when you get the migrants coming through, and then it kind of quiets down. You'll have fewer birds as the resident woodcock are displaying, and then once the nesting season starts, it's quiet. The males don't do the courtship, and then it starts back up again when there's time that they could get a second brood going. So they nest on the ground. The nests are just literally a little hollow on the ground. It's just so great to see. It's one of these natural things that goes on, and most people don't even know it. I remember coming out of basketball practice years ago when I was in high school, and walking out, and here in the football field, right up against the edge of the woods, was a woodcock doing its display. And I'm, of course, being the naive high school 10th grader I was, hey guys, that's really cool. It's a woodcock displaying right over there. And they're like, you can imagine.
Great.
Oh my God.
Of course.
I never lived that down. But anyway, that's a real good sign of spring for me. And I got to see one the other day, so it's awesome.
Spring is imminent. As a veteran birder, maybe this doesn't apply as much to someone like you, but I think of spring coming around, I think, all right, it's time to shake off the rust.
For sure, always.
Those bird calls coming through, and it's always a matter of, all right, now which warbler is that? Is that a vireo, and which vireo was it? Was that a slow cadence, or was it get slurry, et cetera, et cetera? Yeah. How do you, do you do anything to shake off the rust? Is it just spend a bunch of time in the field? How do you prepare to take advantage of your limited number of hours in the field in the spring when the birds are starting to really pop?
Well, that's a really good question. I used to, back in the day, I used to pop in a CD of bird songs. Like when I was headed to a spring festival where I was going to be guiding, I would pop in the CD and listen to the bird songs as they went through. Now, of course, you can dial them up on your iPhone. I think I've gotten to a place where I don't really have to do that. Instead, I just spend time outside and I'm like, okay. And if I'm, there's always that thing for me. It's always like, the wimpy spring warbler calls, like bay-breasted warbler and some of the other like really light singers that are real wispy. Some of those I have trouble. So sometimes I'll have to chase those down. But I always love it in spring too when you get pine warbler, chipping sparrow, and worm-eating warbler all singing in the same place, which is kind of rare. There are a few places you can get it around here. And I love it because you can really tell the difference when you listen to all three of them kind of in close succession. But no, I just spend more time outside and just give myself a little bit of time to tune in. And it's like remembering a song like a record that you haven't heard for 20 years. You're like, oh my gosh, that's totally right. That's.
And the next thing you know, you kind of are remembering the lyrics to the song that you haven't heard in 20 years. I think for me, I find that I always start by having these notes of like, okay, that's a thrush I'm hearing, where it's like I start by breaking him down into these kind of family groups where I'm like, all right, that's definitely a vireo that I'm hearing. And from there, I still have to kind of piece myself back into this, identification trio of things. And I have not spent a lot of time using any of the the bird quiz apps. There's lots of bird quiz apps out there that it's not just listening to a song over and over again and trying to commit it to memory, but it's being quizzed on them. The other thing is, do you find that you have an easier time remembering certain groups of bird calls or types of bird calls? So obviously warblers are just one of the, I think, the most exciting groups of birds coming through in the spring. They're colorful. They have such dynamic plumage from spring to fall. And those are the birds I think a lot of people, myself included, tend to focus on and be like, all right, if I'm just going to sit and listen to bird call and work on it, I'm doing warblers. What about you? Do you find that do you kind of find one group you pick up easier or that you know better? Or at this stage, is it just all Bill Thompson, Pro-birder?
I wish. No, I mean, there are warbler calls that I don't get to hear all the time that I need to, refresh my memory on. So, I mean, I think it's always good to get a little practice in. I prefer going after live birds. When I was a kid learning bird songs, it was really, really frustrating and really, really hard. And then one spring, it just kicked in. And after that, I could refresh my memory by hearing a song going, oh, no, wait a minute, what's that? And you get there and you get to it and you're like, oh, right, okay. Like I don't very often get to hear palm warblers. They kind of come through. Mm-hmm. They don't nest here. They come through in the spring and fall. They're not singing in the fall. They're calling. And that, you might get to hear them once or twice, but you don't hear them a lot. So that's when I often, hearing yellow-rumped warblers sing their song or ruby-crowned kinglets sing their song. These are, very beautiful, elaborate songs that, often I'll have to track the bird down.
Yeah, and depending on where you run into them, birds can have absolutely different sounds. You go up to Alaska and you hear a fox sparrow, it sounds completely different than down in Wisconsin or certainly southeast Ohio. So speaking of Alaska.
What about Alaska?
That's going to be on the Ben Lizdas Birding Optics Tour this spring. I'm going to be going back to the Ketchikan Bay Shorebird Festival.
You're excited about that, aren't you?
I am. It's a great event to be at. The spectacle of all those shorebirds migrating through there is phenomenal. The whole town embraces this shorebird festival. It really is such a great community event where the town of Homer comes out and celebrates this like ritual of spring, and they're also into the birds and the nature and the wildlife and the migration happening there. It's a really exciting event to be a part of. So looking forward to being back there and hearing their strange sounding fox sparrows.
and hearing the strange sounding townspeople in the bird song contest.
Yeah, the bird calling contest is fantastic. And then of course that is the birthplace of IBLA, the International Bird Beer Label Association, which we've brought up before on this podcast. You and I are both legitimate members in good standing. But once again, for people wanting to know about IBLA, IBBLA, go ahead and Google it. You won't regret it.
Well, and I don't think that's a little close to some things people definitely don't want to Google. I think they need to Google International Bird Beer Label Association.
Yeah.
Just if you just Google IBLA, that's like Googling bears. You just don't want to do it.
So where else are we going to be about this spring? We've got some trips coming up. We're going to be at the New River Birding Festival.
I'm going to San Diego tomorrow to the San Diego Bird Fest,
which will have happened by the time this podcast airs.
I know, but we'll update people. And what are you doing this weekend?
Yeah. This weekend is the American Birkebeiner. That ski marathon that I've been training for the past 10 months. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to cross country ski for 55 kilometers.
How many miles is that? Speak English.
It's about 30 miles. Me and 10,000
10,000?
Yeah, it's the largest ski event in North
America.
Will
you be out front on new untouched
skiing.
snow?
Are you kidding? These are like post-Olympians who are going to be in the elite wave. No, I'll be skiing in wave 3, which is actually pretty good.
Awesome, man. Well, you'll have to give us the Birkebeiner report next episode.
Well, Yeah, I was actually up in Cable, Wisconsin last weekend, just doing some training for it, and picked up boreal
Oh,
chickadee
dude. Okay.
for the Out There with the Birds Big Year challenge. So I'm feeling pretty confident about myself as we're kind of getting things going. Now that I've been, got a couple of these southern birds after our Florida trip in, I feel like I got you in my sights.
Good. That's what I wondered what that creepy feeling is. Like when your palms itch, somebody's going to give you money, they say. When your ears burn, somebody's talking about you. Yeah, I felt my back was like crawling, like there were.
As I was ticking down the species. So should we
go
share
ahead,
numbers
let's
right
do
now?
it.
I mean, are you ready to share
ready.
numbers? All right.
I
Where
ain't
you
scared. I think when I did it the other day, I think I'm at 171. I think.
Okay. All right. I'm within 10 of you. Now I'm still behind 162. 162. So yeah, I'm feeling way more hopeful than I did when we were first reported. Like I can actually say 162 and feel about it. Now, probably one of my biggest misses that I think I'm going to regret the most is when I was standing literally within 10 feet of you, and you and a number of other people, so I know this wasn't just you saying this, you weren't stringing, had magnificent frigate bird.
But dude, you're going to get that in
Florida.
Honduras. We've established this.
That's what I'm thinking. So, but
relax,
I'm still,
young grasshopper.
Right.
This all will be well.
You're right.
And you know what else? You're going to get a whole bunch of birds up in Kachemak Bay that I'm not going to get. You need to really revel in that and use. You got 17 hours of daylight up there while you're up there, or something weird.
Yeah, and I'll be up there with our friend Raymond Van Buskirk from Brant Nature Tours, and he's a top-notch birder.
I think Noah Stricker's going to be there too, isn't he? You guys are having a reunion without me. I'm kind of ticked about that.
Yes. So I'm going to be actually sitting pretty well in terms of assistance here for helping me try to track down some exciting birds while I'm up there between the daylight and the crows.
I'm glad you got help. It's going to pay off.
I'm going to need it. You San Diego coming up for you, though.
Yep. I'm going to get some birds in San Diego, one or two. I'm guiding every day down there, I think, and I'm playing some music, so it's going to be fun. I'll also be repping BWD, repping the Expo, repping Red Start, repping the Rendezvous, and talking to people.
Repping Madman. Yep. So we briefly touched on Honduras, and I was getting to this concept of shaking off the rust as spring migration approaches, and I'm wondering, as you and I are getting ready to go down to Honduras to do a reader rendezvous and show a bunch of our friends some great tropical birds, how would you tell someone or advise someone to prepare for, say, a first-time birding trip out of the country, somewhere like the tropics where the species diversity can be overwhelming?
Yeah.
So you're going to go down there, and I guess step number 1 is relax. Step number 2 is have fun.
Always.
But always. But beyond that, how do you kind of prepare to not be confused with all the ant tanagers, ant birds, ant wrens, ant thrushes, just to name some of the ant stuffs, ant bee, ant may.
Well, what I've done when I've gone to a new country like that, like the last time I went to Honduras, I was guiding for that Honduras Birding for Conservation tour, and I'd never been to Honduras, so I didn't know necessarily what birds to expect, and I'm guiding. Like, it's a competition. I'm guiding 10 people or whatever. So I got the field guide in advance, and I just flipped through it and started getting familiar. You've got reference points for, and one of the things, if it's your first time to the tropics, you want to not spaz out and not get overwhelmed. And so I always start by saying, what size is it? Is it smaller than a robin? Mm-hmm. Is it bigger than a robin? Is it smaller than a crow? Is it bigger than a crow? And then, the neat thing is about these tropical field guides, they've gotten so good that they've got really good art right next to the short descriptions, and oftentimes they'll have some more information later. But we also have this plethora of really great guides throughout all the well-known tropical destinations for birding, and really worldwide. Yeah. I mean, the explosion of guides has just been amazing. I talked with Noah.
There are schools. Schools down there that actually teach people how to be bird guides as part of their ecotourism.
So everybody down there knows what to expect. If you're going on a tour or you're visiting an eco lodge, they will have a bird list of expected species. Get that list, go through it. If it's a list that does seasonality, that's awesome. And just know that you're also, if you're going down this time of year and when it's colder here in the northern hemisphere, you're going to go down there, you're going to see a lot of our birds. You're going to see orioles. You're going to see tanagers. You're going to see
exactly. There will be familiar faces.
Just try to relax and enjoy the diversity. Because I can say this, and I've talked to much more well-traveled birders than I over the years about this very thing. It's really refreshing when you've traveled a bunch and you kind of know the birds. It's amazing to go somewhere where you don't know the birds. It's like going back,
Everything's exciting.
It is. Everything's the stuff at the, drinking in the puddle by the side of the road. That's a lifer, I mean, it's really cool. Yeah. So I love that challenge. And, I don't go too hard at it because I don't want to bore myself with it. I don't want to hammer, make it like back in being in school where you got to study. Mm-hmm. I look through, I get familiar. I'm like, oh, I'd like to see one of those. I always mark a few birds in my head. Like I'd really like to see that, And so when you get to your tour and the guide says, so are there any birds you particularly want to see? Like we do on our rendezvous always, I'm always saying, oh yeah, I'd like to see this bird and that bird and this bird. And usually if the guide knows they're around, they'll work extra hard to get it for you. So that's it.
And I think one of the things I'm hearing you saying, which is kind of an assumption, but I think it's worth stating, is if you're going to go to the tropics and you want a birding experience, hire a guide. It's worth it.
It's almost everywhere you can do that too. Almost every lodge has it. Even cruise lines that aren't really doing natural history of birds, you can almost always find a local birding guide. And there are websites like Birding Pal and things like that will allow you to find guides.
Someone who knows the bird calls down there, especially because you're not talking about habitat where you're going to be able to get your eyes on these birds easily. So many of the birds in this dense tropical habitat are heard before they are seen, if they are seen. Having someone who's got sharp ears, or even just ears that are used to hearing those birds, can go a long way to enhancing your experience. So I couldn't imagine just going down to, say, Panama birding on Pipeline Road by myself. Even though I've been there 3 or 4 times, I would miss a ton of stuff. Even though we know it's chock full of birds, I'd be walking past them left and right.
And the thing is to not get overwhelmed. Just let the birds come to you. Get the ones you can. You're gonna have to let a lot of them go, and that's okay.
As I'm looking through the field guide, one of the things I always find is that you come to these families that are familiar, like jays, for instance. You're like, oh, corvids, jays. All right, these are different kinds of jays that are down here, but I know this. But then you also come across mott-motts, and I don't necessarily try to focus on being able to identify all the mott-motts. But when I was first going to the tropics, I just wanted to be able to know that's a mott-mott and not a trogon, or that's a mott-mott and not a flycatcher, so trying to understand those different new groups that you don't have.
And most of the field guides, again, super improvement, will have the silhouettes or the little color drawings of the birds in the front, or the intro pages to the book, so you can look and get an idea of what are the hornbills, what are the the kingfishers, et cetera, et cetera. So that's always very helpful. And of course, there's eBird. If you're an eBird person, you can pretty much get an eBird list for almost every place you're going, and look at the list for hotspots and stuff like that. It's not something I typically do very often, but it's a nice resource to have.
So when we head down to Honduras, Bill, do you have a bird that is as a target bird? Now, you've been there a couple times. I've been there a couple times. Maybe it's not a life bird, maybe it is. But when you think about a place like Honduras, what are you looking forward to seeing down there?
Well, I always like to see the lovely Cotinga. That's
that I was going to say the same thing.
That's the bird we got to see down there. But I love that. The Pico Bonito has those miradors, those towers. And I love sitting up on those things and just picking out birds. And of course, it really helps if you've got the local guide there. They've got excellent guides at Pico who can say, oh, that's a white hawk, or that's a whatever. I can pick the birds out. I can't always nail them, but.
Yeah. King vulture, one of those birds. Any of like the, crested owl. Some of there's a couple birds on my want list there, and I'm sure we'll probably see actually a good number of those birds.
I hope so. So I also have a musical recommendation this week. I'm digging back into the vault. It's I do this. I think a lot of people do this with authors. Where they'll read something by an author and then they'll swim back upstream if the author's prolific and has had many books. And, it's really nice to be able to do that. I like to do that with musicians. And years ago, when I lived in Baltimore and I was a young bachelor, I went to see Edie Brickell and New Bohemians. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think they were opening for Todd Rundgren. And they blew me away. This was right when that song, What I Am is What I Am. That was her big breakthrough hit. And, her band was all,
lovely
my God,
song.
she had that lovely Texas twang. I was so in love with her.
She's Texan?
Big time.
Okay.
And I bought that album. I loved it. The band was phenomenal.
Yeah. Totally. Her band was really a good band she played with.
Oh, yeah. And
the New Bohemians.
Yep. And I love that album. I got the next album, and then my heart was broken because she married Paul Simon.
That's right.
And she was gone. She was gone forever. So I didn't listen to her for a while.
That's breakup material right there. You marry Paul Simon.
Anyway, so this is like true confessions time. So I was flipping through my music on my phone the other day, and I saw an Edie Brickell album that I bought some years ago, and I listened to it, and I was like, man, that's really good. She's in that school of singer-songwriter people who have great, just a great way of presenting a song, great arrangement, very clever writing, not the rote changes like you hear in a lot of popular music now. And she's sort of like that. Amy Mann is somebody else I've highlighted on this podcast, somebody that's a great talent. So I wanted to buy another Edie Brickell album, so I just went on iTunes and bought this one that's just Edie Brickell. Edie Brickell, and it's got a painting of a wiener dog on the front.
Well, I don't know this album.
It's a damn good album. It is.
What's it called?
It's just called Edie Brickell.
Oh, it's just self-titled.
Yeah. And I know it's not her debut album because it's 2011, I think, is when it came out. But it's just, I just really, really like it. She's a great singer and clever. And, I kind of want to say she's probably around my age, and she's singing songs about stuff that sort of resonates with, it's, I find it kind of hard to relate to the, this week's flavor on pop radio.
Yeah, I hear you.
But you can really relate to somebody who's got some life experience and singing about, things that you can, that are familiar. So Edie Brickell, the album is called Edie Brickell, came out in 2011. Great lead track on it. Give It Another Day is phenomenal. It's been on heavy rotation.
I'm gonna have to hear that. I'm gonna recommend a different Edie Brickell album to you that I'm familiar with. Probably the only one of her solo albums that I own, but love it quite a bit. From 1994.
Okay.
So quite a bit earlier, called Picture Perfect Morning.
Right. I'm gonna get that one because I don't have that one.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Well, now that we've had Fanboy Hour here on Out There with the Birds.
Yeah.
Let's. I think it's about time to wrap this one up. I got to hit the road. I'm going to try to go by the Wilds on the way to Columbus and get Short-Eared Owl and Rough-Legged Hawk for the Out There with the Birds Global Big Year Challenge trademark.
Oh, interesting. You're trying to intimidate me.
No, I'm not. I'm just living.
It's working.
I'm just living my life, bro.
Yeah, I hear you.
All right, Ben. So the next time I talk to you, you'll be Berkey Beinard, and I'll be San Diego.
Yes, I'll be Berkey Beinard. You'll be in San Diego, and that means that the next time we compare lists, which we do because that's why we're doing this Global Big Year, Out There with the Birds Global Big Year Challenge trademark. You're probably going to be like 40 to 50, maybe 60 species up on me.
Oh man, it's all. You know what? This is a NASCAR race. You got plenty of time to lap me.
Exactly.
Don't worry about it. Now, I do want to put this in your head. I think we need to have some sort of thing where the birds we're seeing, we're going to donate like $1 per bird to conservation or something. We got to have a cause-related marketing thing with this, okay?
You know what? I think that's a great idea. I would like any of our listeners to email you.
Okay.
To email you suggestions about what would be something that they would like to see us support and why. Mm-hmm. Whether is it a local nature center, is it binoculars for kids who are doing some birding type activity, is it to do some species conservation? What's out there that's moving the hearts of our listeners? I'd like to know. Maybe what we can do is figure out some way of generating some funds to support some great birding cause through our Out There with the Birds Global Big Year Challenge
trademark. It would make me feel better about being such a
About
hardcore birder. Well, and yeah, exactly.
So if someone wants to email you, Bill, how would they do that?
They can send it to editor@birdwatchersdigest.com.
Okay.
EDITOR.
Editor
at birdwatchersdigest.com.
Okay. Excellent.
Okay.
I might send some suggestions to you under a pseudonym.
That'd be good. I'm sure I'll read them carefully and respond. All right. Good luck at the Berkey Binder, brother.
Thanks, Bill. Good. Have a great time in San Diego. And then I will look forward to catching you on the flip side. And I don't know if it's our next episode that we are going to probably be recording from Honduras or not, but
could be.
It's coming up soon. So I got to start cracking open that field guide and studying those birds as well.
All right, man. Take care, buddy.
All right. Yeah.
Bye.
Take it easy.
And that's a wrap for this episode of Out There with the Birds. Special thanks to Swarovski, our optics sponsor. Learn more about their fine line of birding and lifestyle optics at SwarovskiOptic.com. That's Swarovski followed by optic with a K.com. If you love to take photos of birds, Tamron telephoto camera lenses offer powerful performance that exceeds your imagination. Discover more at tinyurl.com/Tamron-BWD. Your source for the best birding optics is Red Start Birding. Great birding starts here. RedStartBirding.com. Finally, we're also supported by the wonderfully enriching Reader Rendezvous birding trips from Birdwatchers Digest. Your next birding adventure starts at birdwatchersdigest.com/RR. Tune in next time for some more audible emissions from these birding magicians, Bill and Ben. Until then, this is Phoebe reminding you to keep your timberdoodles peetin' and your brown creepers creepin', and we'll see you out there with the birds.